Andy Staples from Sports Illustrated covering the tournament for the magazine and the website, SI.com. Let's preview what's going to happen today before we look back last night. Tell us what's going to happen today and tonight that we're talking about on Saturday, Andy.
I don't know. I think North Carolina-Villanova looks like an interesting game, and it's an 8-9, so nothing's really an upset. But I want to see how those two teams play because they developed as the year went on. They looked nothing like they did at the beginning. And the winner of that game, if they're clicking, might be able to give Kansas trouble on the weekend.
All right. Who is tonight or today's New Mexico?
Ooh. Well, a lot of people are saying Northwestern State against Florida. I'm not sure I see that. Florida was one of those teams that usually beat the teams they were supposed to beat. The games they lost were all conference road games. They lost at Arizona. They have issues in close games. They don't really know who their guy is to go to in a tight game. I don't think this is going to be a tight game. I know a lot of people are saying Northwestern State can bump them off, but it just doesn't seem like the right kind of matchup for that to happen.
If you look at these Friday games and how these coaches look at what happened, because I'm sure it's a teaching point for somebody today or tonight who's highly ranked, who's going to say, look what happened to New Mexico. Look what nearly happened to Marquette. Some of these scares that happen, can you see that? And who would be the team or coach that would use that as a keep this in mind as you go out and play?
I think Bill Self will use it with his players, even though they're a 1 seed, because they've experienced the sting before, 15 losing to a 2, and he's gonna have them on high alert, I imagine, because he's felt it before. And I think more than anything, coaches will probably use what happened to Marquette more than what happened to New Mexico, where they say, "Don't panic. Look what happens if you don't panic, because you can still pull it out. Don't freak out just because you're down with a few minutes to go. You've still got a shot."
Our poll question is, were you rooting for history with Southern beating Gonzaga or rooting for your brackets to stay intact? What were you doing?
History. Always history. I'm a writer. I root for the story. 16 beating a 1 is a story. So you always root for the 16 over the 1.
Yeah, but you can't root against Gonzaga. If this is Kentucky or North Carolina or Duke, then maybe you can root for that 16. It's hard to root for an underdog against a sort of underdog.
Gonzaga's not an underdog anymore.
Well,
they're not a cute little story anymore. They're a basketball powerhouse now, and they're going to have to get the hate that the other basketball powerhouses get when a plucky young underdog comes at them. And they're going to see that the whole tournament. The worms kind of turned on. It's sort of like Boise State in football. We're used to Boise State being good now. We're used to Gonzaga being good at basketball. They are a factory if ever there was one. I mean, they don't have the money that Kentucky has, but basketball recruits know if I go to Gonzaga, I'm going to play for a great coach in Mark Few. They've got a big Nike contract. I'm going to be on TV a bunch. It's really not that different than going to one of the power conference powerhouses.
New Mexico against Harvard, and you got Tommy Amaker against Steve Alford. I don't know who called this game and said Harvard, even if they could give them a good game. I didn't even hear they could give them a good game. Everybody had New Mexico, got job. They should have been a number 2 seed, maybe a number 1, played a better schedule than Gonzaga, and now as a number 3, had them in the Final Four. What happened last night?
The NCAA tournament happened, Dan.
Yeah, but Harvard wasn't even.
How it goes.
Yeah, but Harvard wasn't even fully assembled when they lost their 2 best players to start the year.
Yeah, but you just never know, and that's the thing. People are saying, "Oh, I called it." You didn't call this. This isn't that Cornell team that made the Sweet 16 a couple of years ago. This was not a great Harvard team, but that's what happens in the NCAA tournament. Sometimes guys just have the best night of their lives, and the other guys, the much better guys on the other side, have the worst night of their lives. And what you get is a magical upset, just like that.
Wichita State over Pitt yesterday. I'd been telling the audience about, Jamie Dixon, Pitt head coach, rumored to be up for the USC job. That's not a good audition for if he's going to take the job at USC or USC wants him.
No, maybe USC should hire Greg Marshall from Wichita State. That dude's been getting it done since he was at Winthrop.
Okay,
It's
but
funny,
USC.
he's one of those guys that everybody says is the up and coming young coach. Well, he's not that young anymore, but he's still up and coming.
But you have USC, and let's face it, it's like being the football coach at Kentucky or the basketball coach at Alabama. You go to USC, can you get a big name there? And they're talking about bringing Tim Floyd back to USC.
I think you can get a big name because they've got some money. They're going to get some more money with the new Pac-12 TV contracts kicking in. They should be able to get a big name. And the thing is, you can be a good basketball coach at a football school. Just ask Thad Matta and Billy Donovan. They've done great. And the better part of it is there's a lot less pressure. If you do what Ben Howland does at UCLA, at USC, you're still employed. At UCLA, Howland's on the hot seat. So I'd say it's the best of both worlds because you have all the resources of a school like USC, but none of the pressure that they have at your crosstown rival.
It's Andy Staples from Sports Illustrated joining us, Dan Patrick Show. That being said, with Ben Howland, how important is this game against Minnesota for his future with the Bruins?
Sounds pretty important. I mean, the other day they asked him how important it was, and he says, you're going to have to ask Dan, talking about the athletic director, Dan Guerrero. And then so they tried to ask Dan, and Dan was too busy traveling to talk to anybody. I travel all the time, and I use a cell phone to talk to people.
Well, he's probably traveling looking for a coach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say it's fairly important. I'd say Ben Howland needs to make a run here, or things might be done there.
I got Jim Boeheim next hour. What kind of mood will Boeheim be in?
It's early.
Not because of his performance last night, because this investigation?
Well, because this stuff always pops up, and it's funny how the stories pop up the day before the tournament. That's just how they always work. And, yeah, I imagine he's a little combative at this point.
Is the NCAA out to get Syracuse?
I don't know. The NCAA is out to get him. I think they've gotten reports of stuff that rules were broken, so they're trying to find out if rules are broken. We don't even know what they're accusing them of yet. We've got drips and drabs of it, but until we see a notice of allegations or anything, we don't even know if they're accused of anything serious that the NCAA felt like it could prove.
Well, I'll let you know how it goes with Jim. Thank you, Andy. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, buddy. Andy Staples, Sports Illustrated, covering the tournament for the magazine, also the website.